Right to a channel of light fluid. Track Rocket by MC Morrado. It was September of 1942. I worked on a prominent railway. By trade I am a locomotive fireman, shoveling coal into fireboxes, or under the man-operated switches and levers to control a steam locomotive. These new contraptions, known by the name of diesel locomotives, are beginning to put into production. Those were in use up in New York, as far as I knew at the time. A young inventor from England came here to Virginia to get to work on some experimental locomotives with government funding, granted directly from a penned order by President Roosevelt himself. Bertie Thomas, a short corgi standing at 5'3", is an eccentric and polite man. FDR ordered the military to buy up all the coal to go towards the war effort. Bertie Thomas came to America to help us make do with what we have until diesel locomotives take over for steam. I was an assigned fireman to help drive the trains built by the collaboration of the British and American engineering teams in the Newport News train yards. Tanks, ammo, trucks, oil tankers and weapons came along on freight cars along the tracks, constantly busy helping with the war effort. I've had to take 20-hour shifts just to keep up with all the demand. I'm hardly at home with my family much these days. "What, Jerry, you awake, mate?" Bertie got out of my tired slumber after having just done a 27 consecutive hour shift with no breaks. Yeah, I'm all right. I yawned before following the short corgi to the massive shed where research was being carried out, and not a single lump of coal was in sight. 5 various steam locomotives showing each different concepts as to how America the Beautiful is going to thrive in coal ration was a jaw-dropping display. 1 tank engine was burning firewood, 2 tender engines modified to burn oil instead of coal, 1 bigger locomotive in the middle being overhauled, and 1 locomotive that stood out among the rest. "Let's take a crack at this old beauty here, shall we?" Bertie announced, gesturing for me to continue following him. My God, it was a gorgeous locomotive indeed. It's an old 460 built in 1915. It was destined to be scrapped until the war began, and Bertie began restoring the old tender engines to working order. He described in detail how the boiler had been overhauled and completely redesigned internally to produce more power and increase its efficiency with the most ultra-modern features 1942 had to offer. A brass nameplate on the side of it reads Track Rocket. The Brits always have a thing for naming their engines, and I wish it was done here too if I'm being honest with myself. The Track Rocket's black paint shined with a reflective finish, the new brass polished, connecting rods all oiled, wheels nice and shiny, and overall a finished restoration ready to get out the door. I followed Bertie into the cab of the modified steam tender engine, ready to hear what he had to say first. The only thing that matters was the Allies defeating the axis of evil. "Track Rocket here is steamed up with the help of oil. Coal is obsolete, my dear chap. Oil's a new thing in town to heat up this locomotive's boiler. Let's take it out for a spin, shall we?" Bertie announced. Then we began the standard procedures of firing up. It only took 20 minutes for the oil-burning engine to steam up, and the corgi drove it out of the massive shed, shared by 4 other experimental trains. I didn't do much, except sometimes help operate levers and toot the whistle. With an oil burner I don't have to shovel any coal, which is good. My back is already knackered from 1 long week I've had transporting tanks by train. Testing the Track Rocket so far is going more smoothly than I ever expected. Bertie went over a checklist scribbled down on a notepad as we both tested the locomotive's functions and movement, going over basic safety checks for redundancy's sake. "My experiments, just converting a coal burner to run oil by itself isn't enough. There isn't much improvement. The boiler has to be redesigned and rebuilt appropriately. That wasn't much of a burden. The more power the better. Some asbestos makes for some mighty fine insulation if I do say so myself." The corgi inventor casually talked about what he helped do while building Track Rocket in that Newport News train shed. Track Rocket chuffed into a siding. We took on the task by testing it out by hauling a freight train to the shipyard. A wolf in overalls coupled Track Rocket to a 6-car-long train, and soon it was off along the tracks. All I had to do was adjust a spigot knob to make sure no excess smoke was coming out of the funnel. Excess smoke was the sign of unburned fuel being wasted. The Track Rocket was originally going to be christened as the Oil Kettle, but nobody liked that name, so Track Rocket won the naming vote by a landslide. Delivery of the freight train to a siding at the shipyard went flawlessly. Track Rocket stopped for a little bit to top up on oil and water to prepare for taking herself on a true maiden voyage. Diesel's already starting to become the new standard locomotives around here. Bertie certainly was thinking ahead. These days we're more likely to come across an oil tanker than a coal hopper, so I can see why the modifications made sense. When locomotive production starts back up again when all this war calamity is over, the rail companies are going to start retiring steam engines in favour of brand new diesels. And the steamies are only still here because the resources have been poured into the war effort. Fuel oil has been rationed, but the track rocket needs it to run, therefore it's strangely exempt from the rationing restrictions put in place. Track rocket is built and restored to act as a start to slowly fully transition from steam to new diesels, like how a kerosene lamp is the in-between of a candle and a light bulb. When coal is long for the rails, the remaining steamies can just be modified to run on oil. Bertie snapped me out of wanting to fall asleep while standing in the engine's cab. Makes sense. When I was being drafted into the Great War, all there were steamies everywhere. Nobody even knew what the word diesel was yet. How times have changed, boy, I added, giving a bit of what I saw when I was some 18-year-old drafted into the Great War. Honestly, I didn't expect there to be a Second World War going on in this day and age, especially in my lifetime. I'm 42 with 5 kids and a wife. After the Great War ended, I decided to take it easy by working on the Army Railway. Bertie Thomas is part of the Royal British Air Force, but he somehow convinced his country to let him work on trains in America in the name of Allied Research, which is one hell of a feat by itself to have a silver tongue like that. Bertie constantly asks me how the First World War happened from my American point of view. I know that Corgi recalls shooting down German planes in some of his ramblings since the Second World War broke out. He came here in 1942, a full year after the rest of his assigned research team arrived in Newport News. He's only 21 and is so much more ahead of him. Soon enough, Track Rocket was coupled to a train. The train in question was 2 empty coaches at the front, accompanied by a freight train carrying weapons for war such as tanks and artillery guns, and those new things called jeeps on a 10 freight car long haul. Not even accounting of the 2 empty passenger coaches at the front. This is probably going to push the oil burn into its limits. We have only one way to find out. We're headed off to San Francisco to drop this off at. Shipyards need to get this to American troops in the Pacific. Just the 2 of us, a Brit and a Yank. So exciting. I've never been to the west coast of your country before, Bertie excitedly declared, running the track rocket into full steam en route towards California from here in Newport News. We're going from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast, east to west. Sounds like a bit of something worth trying out on this old girl, I added, helping him move the oil-burning steamy in the right direction along the tracks. With all the weight being hauled, Track Rocket wasn't going very fast compared to a car, but these trains don't get stuck in traffic or stop as often. Track Rocket was originally built for passenger trains and a long line of coaches back in the day. As long as we have oil and water, we should be able to make it at least 200 miles south by tonight. No shoveling needed, all we have is each other's company along the rails. What's left of my tail wagged from anticipation. I'm a wolf beast man, obviously not as much in my prime anymore, but still kicking. Half my tail got shot off during the Great War. My face has some scars on the left side out having had my face reconstructed in 1919 as a result from getting shot in the face by some high-caliber weapons or rounds, but not exactly sure which. I don't know why I'm still in the army and had all that in the Great War. Maybe I'm just some wolf who can't get enough of serving Uncle Sam. The trains are why I'm still in the service. Something more laid back even a washed-up veteran in their 40s can do with one eye closed. I can officially say I spent far more time in the cab of a locomotive than behind the wheel of a car. I hardly drive a car much at all. My first car I bought after the Great War was a Model T Ford, which I later crashed into a storefront back when I had too much to drink before Bertie was even born. Track Rocket chuffed along the tracks, speeding past the conventional steamy that ran out of coal with grace. Coal has been more and more put in being used for making steel for tanks and weapons. I wouldn't be surprised when the coal hopper says out of order on it. Fairly new diesels built before America got involved in this current world war we're in are seen moving along carrying passengers and troops alike with long lines of coaches. I have a soft spot for steam engines. Everybody who knows me knows that. I've been working on them, cleaning the ash out, shoveling coal, getting to know how they work down to the last bolt since 1919. Track rocket burning oil instead of coal makes my life a lot easier. No ash to clean out and no shoveling coal. My back is killing me these days. I'm all in for a Bertie's oil burner plans. One way for me to still travel the country on steam while I still have the chance. When I was a kid, my parents' house didn't have electricity or indoor plumbing. If I wanted to drop some logs into the swamp, I'd have to do it in an outhouse. Getting drafted in 1918 was in a way the best thing that ever happened to me. I stayed in the army since then after the Great War. He knew a wolf from rural South Carolina would really move up in the world so quickly. My family is living in Newport News, Virginia, with a nice 2-story house with electricity and indoor plumbing. You've seen Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs on the telly? Bertie chimed in, noticing me staring to get a look at the scenery from the cab. No, not yet. My house has a radio, but no TV. I hear those televisions rot your brain, I replied indifferently. Interested in the idea of watching movies, but I have no reason to own a television. A movie theatre screen gets a better big picture for me to see than any television I've seen. The movie theatres sometimes show films in colour, which is almost like sorcery. TVs can't do that. My mum and dad were born in the 1870s. I remember riding horses before cars were even thought of. I even remember riding a horse and buggy when I was a young pup. I didn't have a first car. The closest thing I had to a car for getting drafted in 1918 was a feral horse named Mary. Rode her like a commuter car from 1912 to 1919. She gave me a lot of practice horseback riding from the age of 12 until I was almost 19. Right now, I think Mary's an old girl at 32 who wanders around by herself eating grass in a neighbourhood somewhere in Newport News. One of my sons sometimes rides on Mary and pretends he's a cowboy. Mary knows what to do. If I had a nickel for every time I was taken back to base completely shit-faced on horseback, I'd be richer than Rockefeller. The whole experimental locomotives were all done and slapped together at only $10,000. Wooden oil is what both of our respective countries have plenty of supply of, Bertie commented, causing me to almost choke. $10,000? That's worth more than everything I own in my name combined and then some, I sputtered, not even beginning to comprehend how much that really is. $10,000 to fix up and overhaul 5 locomotives is definitely enough to work with. The wood-fired engine's only been fixed up due to budget limits. I was really going to have that tank engine be fired by propane gas or natural gas. The Crown said no and called my idea mad. So I've concocted that idea from residential water heaters and thought, why not fit into a steam engine? He playfully teased with a hint of disappointment. He doesn't get to fully act out his British mad scientist fantasies, including trains. My house doesn't use any gas yet. My family's house in Newport News uses coal and sometimes wood to heat the home and get hot water. The only thing that uses gas is a stove in the house. I swear times are changing. So much has changed since I was born way back in 1900. The only thing I'm sad to see go is the steam locomotives. That's just a part of the world advancing at a rate faster than I keep up. Cars and automobiles replace the horse and buggy. Light bulbs replace candles. And now diesel and the combustion engine are replacing steam. I remember wanting to buy a used Stanley steamer to drive, but in the end I ended up rolling around town in an impulse buy that was only $100 20 years ago. As someone who is a strong fan of steam-powered cars in my eyes are kind of... what's the word? Dumb. There's a good reason automakers haven't built steam cars since the 30s. Steam makes sense, to me anyway, for things like stationary engines, and particularly locomotives, but not so much with cars. When it comes to old cars and driving on a regular basis and on the rails, I'd take a Detroit Electric over a Stanley steamer any day of the week. A Detroit Electric might be a lady's car, but I could take a break from focusing on boilers. Technology will advance and improve as time goes on. I own gas cars. I've owned a steam car. My wife owned an electric-powered car in the past. Track Rocket did a constant non-stop trip down to North Carolina and eventually South Carolina, showing off the power of modern steam, only stopping for oil and water, which refueling was a little less frequent than initially thought. Atomizer seems to be doing its job well. It is only a new prototype for the firebox. Too much spritzing, not enough misting, Bertie crooned, looking at the oil burner's firebox for closing it. Whatever you say, you showed us to pilgrims, they'd have thought it was witchcraft, I laughed, thinking the corgi was crazy for not being satisfied with Track Rocket's performance. I'm more of an engineer than a pilot, setting the efficiency target of 80% when it comes to the burning of oil. All I might observe in how the fire flows, watching the flame, and keeping an eye on the water levels. It's a tall order I put in. The whole idea is to make do when petrol's being rationed in a time like this. The corgi rambled on about what's been going on in that Newport News train shed where the experimental engines were being worked on. What's next? A train with wings? I teased Bertie, nudging his shoulder. You mean an airplane? He pondered, head tilted and one brow raised, not really getting the joke. From monitoring brass gauges, Track Rocket needs to top up on water more often than oil when stops need to be done. With oil, the burn quality is consistent. No hassle from worrying about grades of coal ranging from lignite coal all the way to the coveted Welsh coal. No build-up of ash making the boiler less efficient when not cleaned out from time to time. Bertie is that British nutty inventor who can build anything on rails. I watched that corgi begin drawing on a notepad how to overhaul his oil burner again. Basically redesign it again to basically be an industrial boiler with wheels. His drawings and new boiler blueprints are nothing short of pure futuristic, doodling things that nobody's really thought of doing. Bertie has a commitment and passion for craftsmanship, a will to build and improve upon old technology with new ideas on levels, thinking outside the box, and building 3 new ones to think out of again. His bright mind is admirably passionate about making things that are better, work and work well, so he's notorious for doing safety checks and experiments over and over again for quality control. However, Bertie's weakness is sometimes biting off more than he can chew. It's a habit with him. My country already thinks he's some kind of wizard. The British love trains in the same way America loves firepower and guns. After the war is over, I'm going to get cracking and build a big electro-diesel with style. I'm going to put in one of those opposed piston diesels like a Fairbanks Morse engine. And the loco will be decked out with chrome. The most stylish thing on earth. Bertie thought out loud, drawing a notepad furiously with a childlike grin. Where'd this come from? I coughed. No, the corgi has a variable attention span. The diesels I've seen all look ugly and too much the same. They have no soul. I want to build one with character when this war is over. He scoffed, jotting down something on his notepad before putting it back in his pocket. It's crazy how things can be so different over in England, separated by the Atlantic Ocean. Bertie began to pass the time by telling me many stories of him growing up in England, sweeping chimneys for pocket change as a kid. He showed me a photograph from his wallet that was taken in 1930. The photograph depicted a young Bertie covered in soot from head to toe, with a smile and holding a wire chimney sweep in one hand. When I was a kid, I'd be helping to look after the family horses, but we didn't have cars. When I was a boy, we didn't have any gas and carburettors to deal with. It was some carrots and a whistle. I laughed heartily, watching Bertie put the photo away back in his wallet. The corgi went back to monitoring gauges for the sake of making sure his prized experiment is running without any irregularities, like leaks or other potential signs of problems. It started to rain hard as a thunderstorm was brewing at night. Our goal was to at least make it into Georgia before stopping for the night at the siding. Tank engines, tender engines and diesels would pass us on the tracks, carrying passengers or freight or a combination of the two. Track Rocket stood out as a pristine black beauty given a second life to her on the tracks, despite being noticeably older than the majority of the locomotives seen along the tracks. This maiden voyage was so much more than just another test of wartime and innovation to Bertie. The hum of the firebox burning oil and sounding like a home furnace was strangely easy on the ears, is all I can say. Eventually, we decided to stop when we got too tired to go on, and parked to the siding before deciding to sleep in one of the empty coaches when crossing state lines into Georgia. We got up for the crack of dawn to continue our journey in the cab of Track Rocket, hoping to get farther than we did yesterday. Bertie and I agreed on a plan to stop for food at noon and stock up for the rest of the trip ahead. It was full steam ahead all the way towards San Francisco. Mile after mile was done at full speed, carrying the freight train and coaches we were tasked with delivering to the shipyard to help with the war effort. This time we truly were ready for the long haul, only to an all-nighter at full speed. Track Rocket was now in for its real durability test, an attempt to go from coast to coast as fast as possible. A train can go faster across the country more reliably than a car ever can, and Bertie was more than eager to push Track Rocket to its absolute limits. We only stopped for oil and water throughout that day of almost non-stop travel. One of us wanted to take a bathroom break. We'd hop into a coach and sneak in to use the bathroom, while still moving to prevent us from having to make any unnecessary stops along the way to our intended destination. The modern steam design of the engine's boilers made it a little more efficient in water consumption, as a side effect from Bertie redesigning the internals to heat and work. It's magic how Track Rocket's modern steam experimental upgrades made it slightly more double the efficiency of a standard locomotive. Exhaust steam from the cylinders are recirculated through somewhere to help heat the boiler along the fuel oil, which already does a far better job than standard coal. Bertie explains how things rerouted, circulate steam a few times throughout the boiler, while the fully utilised steam leaves through the funnel. That corgi showed me on his well-used notepad, detailing what he calls hot steam recirculation. And he calculated the true efficiency levels after long hours of me helping him calibrate and tune it properly from the cab. Track Rocket is built to be significantly more advanced than the other steam engines that are fitted to burn oil or wood. See, water isn't recirculated. Really hot steam is. It's not a condensing engine. Those have problems exploding boilers and water getting too hot and causing overheating. Good insulation and clever pipework keeps the steam super hot until shoot out the funnel. Bertie attempted to explain part of what he did, which only nodded, pretending to understand. By night time we were passing through Louisiana in late hours, when people generally are asleep, but still going at a consistent speed. Track rocket is also by far the most powerful steam I've ever driven, able to go 55 miles per hour while hauling a train. Making it into Texas was almost effortless from our plan of going across the country at blistering speed, almost unheard of. Halfway across northern Texas in the middle of nowhere, Track Rocket came to a gradual stop at a run of oil in the dead of night. "Oh, bollocks!" Bertie shouted. I followed the corgi out of the cab with flashlights in hand. "Maybe we can look for a telephone to use somewhere," I interjected, knowing what to do in case an engine runs out of steam on the tracks. In my mind, it's all standard procedure memorized from the railroad handbook. The Texas desert was only illuminated by the moonlight without a single cloud in the sky that starry night. "I'm sure somebody inside let us use their telephone." Bertie got my undivided attention, pointing to the Victorian-era house a mile away on foot. "Lights on, Owen. I don't think anyone's home." I told the corgi an observation of mine. Nonetheless, that didn't deter him from starting to begin the trek towards that old house. I reluctantly followed Bertie on foot to the front doorstep of this seemingly abandoned house. The house has long seen better days, yet it was strangely preserved, and the wood has never rotted from a lack of humidity in the desert. An ancient Ford Model T touring car sat abandoned in the dirt driveway. Black paint faded from years out in the desert sun. Interior destroyed by feral animals and weathered from the elements. "Hello? Anybody here? Oh, we need to use the telephone," Bertie hollered, knocking on the door, expecting someone to answer, but to no avail. "Told you nobody's home," I say with a stern look on my face. "Then nobody will mind if we snoop around here, eh?" The corgi protested with a new plan, opened the front door with a lockpick, opened the door for I followed him inside the Victorian-era house. The inside looks as if whoever lived here previously packed some things in a rush before leaving. Most of the contents inside the house were covered in a thick blanket of dust and left untouched for many years. No signs of any vandalism were present. There isn't much in the way of anything that uses electricity apart from only a few lamps that looked to have been made when I was coming of age in the First World War. Bertie immediately began searching the house for a telephone without a lick of hesitation. I flicked the light switch on and off to no avail. The house had no power. Our flashlights were the only things lighting the inside of this dark house. The optimistic idea of finding a telephone quickly faded as my attention shifted to find any signs of a way to restore power to the house. The old house does not look like it was originally built to have electricity, most likely retrofitted to replace the candlelit chandeliers and some of the table lamps with ones using light bulbs instead of candles, deemed antiquated in the 20th century. Wandering around the mysterious house gradually set in the feeling of being watched, unknowingly involved in an unholy hide-and-seek game. Bertie walked upstairs to the second floor to search some bedrooms. "I found a telephone." "Ah, bollocks, it doesn't work, Jerry." The corgi called out to me, annoyed by the power being out. "Hold on, I'm trying to get the power on first," I calmly replied, encouraging him to be more patient. What was the circuit breaker? That was the real question I had. Soon enough I found myself aimlessly opening and closing doors, till finding where one led to a staircase into the pitch-black cellar. The air was oddly dank, despite how dry the air was outside in the North Texas desert. Cobwebs, dust and dead spiders were everywhere as I went down every creaking wood step. My flashlight shined onto a rather dirty cellar, untouched by the outside elements. "What do we have here?" I muttered under my breath, finishing walking down the stairs to see what was there. Junk cluttered some corners, so not seeming in the way of navigating the cellar. A water heating furnace was near a wall, only 30 feet away from the stairs. Bags of coal over the whole bunker full of coal reminded my own house back in Newport News, where the furnace and water boiler are also heated by coal. I think I'm going to take a few bags of coal to bring back home once this whole situation gets done and over with. Growing up dirt poor, I remember my mum and dad's shack burning trash and any wood like raked up leaves and sticks to heat their shack from the lone fireplace. Part of me feels more than accomplished from being a kid in the slums during the 1900s and 1910s to a soldier and father living a decent middle-class life. From visual inspection alone, it was easy to tell the water heater and furnace of the abandoned house were manufactured sometime in the 1880s. I continued my search through dark corridors with my flashlight in hand. Residue from coal ash and soot were thoroughly caked onto the brick cellar walls. Whoever must have built the cellar certainly planned to store a lot of coal and some small amounts of junk. Multiple coal bunkers ranging from well-stocked to dry and empty, with only a few lumps in the corner, were scattered almost randomly. Must have been a good dozen tons of coal down there for all I knew. Finally finding the fuse box was more than tedious in a dark cellar I've never been inside of before. Opening the fuse box revealed some fuses that either be blown or missing. It was all a matter of taking out the blown fuses, switching around fuses to connect to the second floor, then flip switches until the breakers were set to give power upstairs to the second floor. All I had to do was get the power on somehow. The cellar was easy to trace my steps in when going back to the staircase. I quickly found out I wasn't alone. And canine instinct caused me to turn off my flashlight, hiding behind a brick coal bunker wall. Watching a dim red light appear from around a corner, a distorted appendage sporadically twitching gripped the wall. I hid behind the coal bunker wall, not seeing the strange abomination pass by from a distant corridor. That was my cue to get out of there. On the battlefield, when sneaking up behind enemy soldiers during the First World War, I was taught a method of crawling slowly and not making a sound, then surprising the enemy with a standard-issue bolt-action bayonet rifle at the time. But I don't think any of my combat training or experience had prepared me for such a thing. That thing smells like grease and soot. So far, the objective is better to get out of the cellar and hope it doesn't notice. Even if I were to attack wherever it is, I wouldn't know where to shoot it. I don't have a weapon on me. Weapon none, enemy unknown. I slowly walked back towards the staircase leading back to the first floor, only slowed up by sometimes having to turn off my flashlight and hide while that thing stalked the cellar corridors. Upon rushing up the stairs, I shut the door behind me to rush outside. Where could the generator be? My house back in Newport News has a gasoline generator in the shed I got when the army was trying to get an unwanted surplus, just before the bombing of Pearl Harbor. There's always a way to find a generator, even in a strange old house in the middle of nowhere. Walking around the house's exterior was all like an elaborate Easter egg hunt, but for a hunk of old iron. Under a weathered, crudely built shed sat behind the house, with a narrow exhaust funnel pointing straight up like a chimney, I spotted a forgotten generator. A 55-gallon steel drum was welded and situated on its side to be a large fuel tank. The finest of redneck engineering even I can admire. Looking closer gave me an idea of what I'm looking at. A 12-horsepower single-cylinder hit-and-miss engine paired with an actual DC generator. The big old thing looked to be all jerry-rigged and wired to run more depending on the electrical demand of the house. It makes sense for a hit-and-miss engine out in the middle of nowhere. No sign of a tower or any service stations for miles. It took some arm strength to turn the flywheels of the old engine, making it start despite my back not being what it used to be. I think Bertie knows the power's on upstairs. I thought out loud, talking to myself before heading back inside to find that corky talking on the telephone upstairs send out for help. Yes, steamy round of oil. Yes, oil. You'll have to reverse back out to the front and get the hose to top of the tender. Send those oil tanker cars. This is a matter of American national security. Hurry up then. Bye. Bertie finished up the phone call, slamming the telephone to hang up. They're coming in with some oil. I made my presence known. Yes, but it'll take a couple hours till we get going on the rails again. Time to get back to Track Rocket's cap, he announced with a goofy smile, tail wagging. In the meantime, I took this opportunity to find a battered pump-action shotgun resting on the mantel, stuffing ammo into my pockets. The gun was left loaded. I decided to take my new weapon. Let's get out of here, I ordered, walking downstairs and out of the house with Bertie reluctantly following behind. We could see Track Rocket from where we were over half a mile away. What about the old Tin Lizzie over there? Ooh, I want to drive, Bertie exclaimed, running over the abandoned Model T touring car with the destroyed interior. You sure they'll run? Surprised the tyres are even still holding air in them, I doubtfully added, telling that the car was a 1917 model when inspecting it. Oh, finders keepers. We can easily load her up on one of the freight cars. Nobody's been here for a long time, so it's mine now, Bertie protested, proposing the idea that we load the abandoned Model T up with the Jeeps. If I get in trouble for this, I'm putting all the blame on you. You understand, kid? I begrudgingly conceded, not bothering trying to stop him. He did not care about getting anyone else in trouble for his actions. Bertie, by a miracle, managed to start the abandoned car, but starting it with a hand crank. Get in, Jerry. Don't feel like walking. He convinced me to get in the car with him before we began driving away from the house. I sat on the tattered rear bench seat, or what was left of the back seat as that corgi drove. And turning over to look on my shoulder, I saw that thing contorting and fully emerging out of the ground and begin chasing the car. Bertie, speed the hell up, we're being followed, I shouted, turning around to point my new shotgun at the abomination beyond words. That thing is black from soot, leaking a black oily substance reminiscent of bunker fuel used in ships. Red lights, what I think are eyes, but I'll never know for certain. Distorted appendages help the beast gallop with its nature-defined shape. That thing's mouths are open wide to consume prey with. Going against anything natural of this world, only saw it as a being possibly from the 9 rings of hell. However, never saw any drawings of demons looking close to what that thing does. Bertie started driving to divert the abomination away from Track Rocket until help came. I fired my first 2 shots into the thing, despite shaky aim and a very bumpy ride hindering my shotgun sights. It let out a guttural belching noise upon being shot, but still continued to give chase regardless. That thing's unnatural speed kept up with the old car, even as Bertie continued to speed up while driving as fast as possible on rough terrain, with the Model T trying to rattle itself to pieces at full throttle. "Speed up!" I shouted a directive to the driving corgi. "I'm trying!" Bertie replied, panicking as he tried picking up more speed in the ramshackle automobile being pushed to its absolute limits. He emptied round after round into the creature that bled a thick, black, oily substance. The abomination of a thing gurgles in pain as I keep shooting the red lights coming from its otherwise black body. It's far more resilient than I ever thought, even in my wildest expectations. When the black substance it bled got splattered onto my fur and clothes, I realized it actually was oil. An idea came to me while reloading. I pulled a brass light out of an overall pocket, lighting it with a single flick, and threw it like a grenade at the creature. It caught on fire almost instantaneously. A section of that thing bloated from the fire until it exploded in a large combustion of its own bodily oil. I ducked for cover in the speeding car so fireballs of burning oil flying in all directions didn't get me. The black oily abomination stopped, violently shaking its distorted limbs and appendages before retreating somewhere in the distance. "Bertie, slow down! We're in the clear!" I gave the all clear to the corgi, which took this opportunity to drive us back towards where Track Rocket had come to a stop. By the time help arrived, I helped Bertie load the old Model T onto one of the freight cars with long planks of wood, used the way to get it up there, and the car was secured with ropes. That corgi owes me more than a few favours for doing that. "What happened to you two?" When the fireman and the steam locomotive that arrived with an oil tanker asked upon seeing how dirty myself and Bertie were. "I'm not here to answer questions. We're here to get oil in the tender." I carefully deflected the question, knowing the fireman would not believe a word I said about the truth. "All right then, where'd you fill it with oil?" The fireman responded, off-put by my answer, and assumed it was something classified. Bertie was more than willing to show the driver and fireman of the lone rescue train how to top off Track Rocket's tender with oil from a siphon hose in the old tanker car. During the duration of dealing with the small rescue crew and refuelling, I watched as a lookout, see any signs of that unnatural creature approaching. I never saw it again. Still, I didn't let my guard down regardless until we were moving again. Eventually, after a while of dealing with refueling and get back into the cab of Track Rocket with Bertie, we were off to continue our journey towards the San Francisco shipyard. Track Rocket chugged along happily on oil and water. In terms of energy, oil is more dense than even the best of Welsh coal. I really like trains, mate, but boats to me are like another science project. When watching a steamboat be converted to burn oil instead of coal, then steam turbine boats came along too. But diesel is what really gets me going. Diesel is the most genius thing ever. The builders finally came to their senses, saying, "Oh, we're using this black stuff to heat boilers. We can use it to run the ship on its own," or something like that. I think it's bloody brilliant. Bertie got back to saying whatever's coming off the top of his head, mostly related to all things mechanical. "Whatever you say, kid. I'm not a boat expert." I brushed off the corgi's talk, focused on making sure Track Rocket wasn't running too rich on oil, which is probably one of the easiest jobs they've ever had. What if I could build my own large ships? That's a bit of a thinker. Those big reciprocating bunker fuel engines. Got this idea from old Turbinia, but here it is. Turbines move in the ships. The turbines only run on hot bunker fuel. Bertie brainstormed, scribbling down notes onto a notepad. In the corgi's mind, pushing boilers and coal in ships further into obsolescence was the goal. I didn't say anything, continued to listen even if I didn't understand what he was talking about some of the time. Bertie had always been an undying optimist, spouting unheard of and albeit strange ideas. Track Rocket kept chuffing throughout the night and well into the next day. It was late the next day, just after sunset, when we finally arrived into the San Francisco shipyard. Track Rocket came to a stop in the shipyard at the perfect spot in the yard. I got to the locomotive's cab to stretch my legs as Bertie unloaded his new to him Model T from a freight car. "Staff Sergeant Finnegan, attention!" The tabby cat colonel shouted my rank and last name in the same sentence, getting me to stand at attention. What the short feline want me for? I'm only a train driver in my 40s. "You fought in the First World War pretty well, and this taught you how to change out those dirty conductor clothes and get your ass to the Pacific. Yours going to be round 2. Now's a chance for someone more experienced like you to teach the new privates out on the front lines. Move, move, move!" Colonel barked, pointing to the nearby barracks. In a matter of minutes, I quickly took a shower to get dressed in a uniform lying around. For now, I wouldn't see Bertie or my family again for a long while. They got onto a warship where the troops who were much younger. They were also headed to the front lines of combat on Japanese soil. Survived an encounter of the monster beyond words and comprehension. And then being sent off to fight the horrors of war for a second time is God's way of slapping me in the face, putting out a cigar in my hand. And that was the story of the track rocket and her driver and fireman by MC Morrado. And yes, the Welsh coal that comes from the valley, as I also come from, was the most desired locomotive fuel in the world. The Great Western Railway was designed to run on that amazing stuff, which also cost many, many lives. Every valley in South Wales has its own famed, terrible pit disaster. And those were just the worst of them, or many others. Just less people died. So while I absolutely love railways and steam engines, I can't be too sorry that there's no coal mining in South Wales anymore, or most places. But I hope you enjoyed that. And I'll put a link where you can buy the ebooks of these and other stories of MC Morrado. There will be more VNs. We'll go back to that on Saturday with Infinite Space. And of course, there'll be a short ghost story for Christmas on Christmas Eve. A few things coming up on the channel before the holidays here. And before I go, as always, I want to say a major thank you to all my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. And a special mention to my top patrons: Andy Peng, Smuto, Omar, Nova Starburn, Harvest Mouse Productions, Bieka, Rafu, Fluffy, Kartek, Kovas Vissa, Bastian, Brian Hall, Tiger Cub, Ida Corval, Dissonance, Grizz, Spiderling, Kopi, Cindy Dragowolf, Evan King, Exact, Aaron Fox, and Mohammed Al-Zemel. And thanks to you for watching. Until next time, bye for now.